the latest that we have in the WNBA CBA negotiations. Now, we heard Caitlin Clark speak on the CBA, and I think that's very noteworthy because Caitlin Clark is not going to be the person that steps up and is incredibly outspoken about every single issue that may come forward to her. Of course, she'll touch on things that are important when she has media availability, press conferences, practice scrums, whatever it might be. But Caitlin Clark isn't going to be the most active person on social media speaking out for or against certain things. So when Caitlin Clark says something, you know that it is thoughtful. You know that it has undergone a lot of thought. You know that she knows, we all know that when Caitlin Clark says anything, it carries a lot of weight. Like if Caitlin Clark says she doesn't like pineapple on her pizza, it's like the number one topic on First Take. Like when Caitlin Clark says something, it's impactful. So I think that's important to keep in mind, Cass, as we kind of break down her comments on the CBA.
Yeah, I took them as very metered comments. It was kind of funny as I kept going back over it and watching the video. She's basically just explaining what a negotiation is, which is very
Thank
funny.
you, Caitlin.
One of the things, we'll get to exactly what she said, but I think also in terms of everything you just said, it's also important to remember she just finished her second year in the WNBA. She's going to be 24 in January. She's still very young. And there are a lot of players, a lot of young players I talked to and have talked to this year who are making the same kind of non-comments about it, who are just saying they're learning from the older generation. They're new to all this. I had one player tell me she did not realize that she was in a union until pretty recently. So it is important to remember what you were thinking about and doing at 23, 24 years old. Obviously, Caitlin Clark is massive and bigger than anything, but she is still 24 and, probably wanting to let others talk about the big issue.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Also understanding that Caitlin doesn't seem like the person that wants to be the center of attention all the time. She is in the WNBA, but it's not like she commands that spotlight. It just happens naturally for her. It's not something that she tries to force. So I totally understand why. And also because this is confusing. There's a lot of legalese. There's a lot of, economic talk that frankly, I'm not smart enough or informed enough to really understand the gravity of all of it. So I can imagine, if we're doing that, we as people who cover this sport and have been talking about these CBA negotiations, every week for the last 3+ months? Like if we're having a hard time, grappling all of this, yeah, I know. It feels like forever. It feels like we've been talking about this our whole lives. But, if we've been talking about this every single week over the last several months and we are still, trying to figure out, okay, what does this mean? What does this word mean? What could the potential, the actions and reactions of this be? Of course, the players are as well when their number one job and their number one prerogative is playing basketball. And that's one thing that Caitlin Clark continued to emphasize in her comments. She said, quote, "This is the biggest moment that the WNBA has ever seen." I don't disagree. I would agree with that. She goes on to say it's not something that can be messed up. We're going to fight for everything that we deserve, but at the same time, we need to play basketball. And that's kind of how I'm viewing these negotiations. I know the players view this as the most pivotal point in the WNBA. 100% agree. The players deserve more compensation than what they are getting with the amount of economic growth of the league. 100% agree. But if we're going to get to a point where we miss basketball games, where the season is on hold, the draft is on hold because of these negotiations, because I feel like that does, I don't want to say irreparable damage to the WNBA, but that damages the league and its reputation around the sports world. So I'm with Caitlin there. The most important thing is playing basketball and also getting these negotiations right.
Yeah, that's the little bit of a twist in how Caitlin answered the question versus what we've heard from a lot of players throughout the year, right? There's been talk of we won't play, if it comes down to it, there will be a work stoppage, all this kind of stuff. You had mentioned that, Caitlin doesn't command the attention. Having been around her in kind of just the media circle, like seeing her, reading all of the profiles, everything about her, this is someone who cares deeply about teammates and everyone and wanting to do, what is best for people. And yes, that means getting the deal you deserve. And she talked about that. But also it means for a lot of players, it is very important to keep playing basketball. And as a collective, as you said, we've seen this before in other leagues where when there is a work stoppage, it does impact fandom in a certain way. You know, you feel a certain way, negatively usually, about a stoppage in play. And I think back to, we've mentioned this a lot, you know, Kathy Engelbert talked in 2020 about how important it was to make sure they did not skip a season. That is still very much true. And I think especially for the WNBA, and I know you've kind of talked about this as well, it's been like negative connotations for so long. They've made so many gains. You know, you've spoken about this so well that they can't afford for what might come if they don't play.
The court of public opinion is very strong when it comes to the WNBA. It's like a spark plug for controversy, whether they like it or not. I mean, God forbid Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark like each other's Instagrams. So whenever you are putting your season on hold, or let's say putting the season in jeopardy because of these negotiations, it's not going to be taken very well by everyone. And look, you can't let the haters get you down. You can't let the fear of criticism influence your negotiations one way or another, or settle for something that's less than ideal for both sides simply to avoid, you know, what people are going to say about the league on sports talk shows or on social media. But at the same time, let's not act like the W's growth can't be halted. Let's not act like the WNBA is impenetrable. I always say the NFL is impenetrable. I don't think it matters who's playing in the Super Bowl, what happens, who's wearing what uniforms. The NFL is still going to be the most popular league in America, and there's still going to be hundreds of millions of people that watch it every single week. That's not where the WNBA is right now. The WNBA can't necessarily afford bad PR after bad publicity after bad story, and I think putting the season on hold would do that. I go back to the 1994 Major League Baseball season. I remember it well.
Oh,
Just kidding. But they went on strike in 1994. Major League Baseball did, and there was no World Series. It was canceled that year. And it wasn't until like the 1998, 1999, the long gone summer with Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire and the home run off of it all. That's when everybody got reinvested into Major League Baseball, because you had big time stars in big time markets vying for this massive record. And so that was 4 years in the 90s in Major League Baseball, where a lot of fans were really turned off by the game. The WNBA doesn't have the same amount of investment or foundation as Major League Baseball. So, you know, don't let me tell you that it's going to hurt the league. Let it hit the history books show you that these kind of strikes and work stoppages do harm to leagues.
Yeah, it's also exactly like a game, right? How many times do you hear a commentator talk about momentum, or you're watching the game and that's what you're thinking? Oh, wow, they just stole the momentum. You know, what team has the momentum? The WNBA has the momentum. The league, the players, the owners, everyone. Like Forbes just released their most profitable or most valuable women's teams. And it's mostly the WNBA. They have the momentum. It's just a matter of, you know, to bring it back to Caitlin, like exactly what she said. This is a negotiation. You have to come to a deal that benefits both sides and do what is best for everyone, because everyone can profit if this is done.
Yeah. Protect your expansion teams too. That I thought the Golden State Valkyries came in at such a great time, coming off of Caitlin Clark's rookie year, coming off of Angel Reese's rookie year. All eyes were on Paige in the college season, that the WNBA was really ramping up. And the Golden State Valkyries came in and they had such a great plan to promote the team, that they were packing up the house, that the Valkyries were able to build off of the momentum of the year prior. Don't do that to Toronto and to Portland. two teams that are in women's sports cities. I think Portland is such a great women's sports city. Canada as a whole. I mean, look at the PWHL. That's been gaining a whole lot of momentum, so much investment into the
Let's go.
PWHL in a lot of Canadian cities. PWHL is awesome, by the way. If you haven't tuned
Yeah.
in, give it a watch. Like these are two great women's sports cities in deserving markets. Don't halt the growth of those teams because I do think the next step of WNBA growth is the growth of the expansion teams as well. Not just having them, but the growth and the popularity of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, as you said, Caitlin's going to take the headlines. She was not the only one at Team USA camp to be asked about the CBA. Nafisa talked about it and kind of if she expected her comments about Kathy Engelbert to blow up. Skipping over that, she said, we're going to do whatever it takes to get what we deserve. She said, people are seeing, I think, that change needs to be had. It's coming from so many different directions that so many people feel this way. And I think we're just really excited for the future and what that has to hold. And especially with all these different leagues popping up, unrivaled, our CBA negotiations, the future just seems so bright. Actually, she spoke that at Unrivaled availability this week. Angel Reese also spoke about the CBA, said that the players and the union have done a great job making sure we're all together. Quote, we're riding together on everything. I'm preparing for a season like everybody else is, but we have to come to a negotiation. It's really important for us to come to a common ground that we can all agree on. It's all fair and everybody benefits from it, end quote.
Fascinating. Do you feel like, because you've been doing such a great job following this and reporting on this over the last several months, do you feel like the tone from the players has changed at all over the last several months throughout the negotiations?
Specifically with the Angel Reese quote here, I think her tone has maybe changed a little from the beginning of the season. I think the thing that's always been interesting to me about the tone of the conversation is what things are said in like media availabilities versus how it is presented from the union on social or in statements. I think they may still be far apart, but I think they're closer than they've been. And I think the fact that we are starting to hear about more than just rev share, even though Fee herself said again this week, it is rev share and everything else, that we are hearing a little more about those things kind of makes me think that they're getting a little closer on what's going to happen here because now it's starting to affect everything else.
I agree. And I asked that question because I wasn't quite sure myself if, I'm just reading too far into things, if we're so far into this that I'm just grasping for as many straws as I possibly can. And I don't know if it's just the timeline makes me believe that they should be closer together in negotiations or if it just feels like they're getting closer. Just to your point, in the beginning, it felt like rev share, rev share, rev share, rev share, rev share. Money, 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 money. Rev share and money. And look, that's still the biggest thing. It should be the biggest thing. That's going to set up a massive leap for the next generation of the WNBA. But we've heard housing kind of pop up. We've heard maternity leave pop up. We've heard hardship contracts start to pop up. And it's, look, money and rev share are the number one things. But there's also like a butterfly effect from there. There's a web away from rev share, away from money of, if we get our certain percentage of rev share here, well, then you're not going to get a housing stipend because you're making 5 times what you were making previously. So I think both sides are coming together. At least it sounds like if I want to put these pieces together, like the "It's Always Sunny" meme when you have Charlie like putting all the pieces together on the whiteboard, like looking like a maniac. It does feel like, okay, we are understanding the effects of rev share and money and what more money means. And it sounds like they're getting closer together, at least.
We should get our graphics team on that.
Yeah, we just put our faces on it of like this big web and like picture here, picture there. We've got bags under our eyes because we've been up all night trying to put these pieces together. I feel optimistic. It's going to get done.
I think they all know that it needs to get done on a certain level, whether it's the WNBA or any other league. Like there is a certain level of posturing, right? Like you don't want to give away your hand publicly. I think it was Kelsey Plum who, again, said this week that it was disappointing how far away they were, or how frustrating it could be, or something like that.
Yeah.
And I only bring that up because every time I hear that, I think about, and we've said it before, Sue Bird saying, you've made a good deal when you walk away from the table like a little disappointed or a little annoyed, because both sides are doing that. Like, no one is going to win a CBA. I think the other thing I will also throw in here, whatever is in the CBA, there are going to be unknown or unforeseen repercussions, if you will. It will go out of date probably very quickly. Women's sports is exploding right now in interest. That's kind of what we've seen in the last CBA. Obviously, the players don't want that. That's why they're fighting for rev share so that they can grow with the business. But there will be aspects of this that don't age well.
More money, more problems. I think the W is
Fair.
learning that the hard way, probably as we go through these negotiations. I'm sure we have plenty more to get into over the next couple of weeks as we start to hear more players touch on the CBA negotiations, as we hopefully, ideally, get a little bit more clarity on what the CBA negotiations are starting to look like. And of course, we will keep you updated with all the latest right here on Hoops 360.